Pokémon had never introduced the amount of Pokémon it did with Pokémon Black and White. Given that the story, as well as its characters, took 1.5 years to be written, and with a total of 156 Pokémon to discover, it is expected that Pokémon Black and White would create a big impact in the Pokémon community. As a tradition with each Pokémon generation, let's dive deep into the dark waters surrounding this iceberg. This time we'll talk about Pokémon Black and White as well as their sequels for Nintendo DS. Welcome to the Pokémon Black and White Iceberg.
Say my name, Eisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Pokémon Abuse. Black and White really wanted to stand out as a very different game, and one of these features is the ideology that, while it's well established that humans and Pokémon can be friends and help each other, it's also possible that Pokémon can be mere tools to their trainers. Supposedly, Team Plasma's ideal world is a place where Pokémon and humans live separately, outside of Pokéballs and in the wild, as it was in the beginning of time. Team Plasma's purpose, or at least Ten's ideals, make a lot of sense. We've taken for granted that Pokémon are creatures that we can freely catch and use in battle. However, let's take a look at the Sinnoh region's mythology that I discussed in my previous Iceberg. Long ago, when Sinnoh had just been made, Pokémon and humans led separate lives. That is not to say they didn't help each other. No, indeed they did. They supplied each other with goods and supported each other. A Pokémon proposed to the others to always be ready to help humans. It asked that Pokémon be ready to appear before humans always. Thus, to this day, Pokémon appear to us if we venture into tall grass. It seems that humans and Pokémon are meant to help each other since the very beginning. In fact, Pokémon apparently enjoy their time with their trainers. We have seen instances of this in the anime, where the Pokédex states that generally, wild Pokémon are jealous of trained Pokémon. Even N himself, using his ability to talk to Pokémon, speaks to a Pokémon in the player's party, which states that it likes its trainer. Pokémon do take pride in their victories in battles, and also enjoy certain privileges that wild Pokémon don't. So, while certain trainers might mistreat their Pokémon, apparently the vast majority of these creatures in the Pokémon world enjoy the company of humans as trainers. Shiny Minccino. When talking about infamous shiny Pokémon, we can think about those at the battle facilities in Generation 3, because you were unable to catch them. However, what I consider to be an even worse case of unobtainable shinies is that of Minccino, the one that shows up by Professor Juniper's side during the start of your adventure. If I think it's worse than seeing a shiny Pokémon at a battle facility, is because at least you can interact with them by battling them. Instead, Minccino is just there, waiting for you to start your adventure and be gone forever. Caitlyn in Generation 4. The powerful psychic trainer of the Elite Four in Generation 5 actually debuted in Pokémon Platinum as the head of the Battle Castle in the Battle Frontier. She's never seen battling, but given that her butler Darragh, who also happens to be secretly in love with her, is a Frontier brain, no wonder that she seems to be an even more powerful trainer, as she's part of the Unova Elite Four. The Original Dragon. According to legend, Reshiram and Zekrom were once a single powerful dragon Pokémon used by twin heroes in order to create the Unova region. However, the brothers each sought something different in life, truth for the older brother and ideals for the younger. They began to argue, then fight over whose side was right. The single dragon, in response, split into two Pokémon, Reshiram, who sided with the older twin, and Zekrom, who sided with the younger twin. It is revealed in Pokémon Black 2 and White 2 that when the original dragon split into Reshiram and Zekrom, a third dragon, Kyurem, was created from the leftovers. The Pokédex entry for Kyurem also states that it is waiting for a hero to fill in the missing parts of its body with truth or ideals. Kyurem can be fused with Reshiram or Zekrom to form White Kyurem or Black Kyurem, but the appearance of the original dragon's complete form is unknown. Pokémon Gray. Pokémon Red and Blue Pokémon Yellow, Gold and Silver, Crystal, Ruby and Sapphire, Emerald, Diamond and Pearl, Platinum, Black and White, Gray, wrong, Pokémon Black 2 and White 2. As you already know, the 5th generation finished with the trend of third versions, as we would get a sequel in Black 2 and White 2, and an alternate story in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon for Sun and Moon. The most recent generations got DLC, and judging by how we haven't seen a third version like in the old day, points out that this trend of a third version will never come back. N was born from Pokémon. According to an interview with Junichi Masuda, given that nobody knows who N's parents are, he stated that it's possible that N was born from Pokémon. This is a weird thing to say, as there's not known example of any human being born to Pokémon, nor is it something that would make sense unless the offspring is an actual Pokémon. N is a Zoroark. As if Masuda's words weren't enough to think that N is in reality a Pokémon, let's see what's led people to think that N is a Zoroark. Let's start from weakest to strongest. N tilted 90 degrees is the letter Z for Zoroark. N's hair is shaped like Zoroark's. Zoroark is a master of illusions. N can talk to Pokémon. Ghetsis calls N a freak without a human heart. In Pokémon Black and White 2, there's a Zoroark that leads the player to N's castle. Instead of finding the Zoroark, the player finds N, with Zoroark nowhere to be found. With the use of the memory link feature, there's a flashback that triggers when encountering a Zoroark. This Pokémon doesn't show up at all in the flashbacks. Instead, it's N who overhears two Team Plasma grunts talking about him. How is it possible that a character that doesn't show up has a flashback about something that they never witnessed? There are obviously some aspects that could debunk this theory, like Ghetsis never realizing that he's a Pokémon. But I think that Game Freak has purposefully given hints to the players that N is indeed a Zoroark. N might have taken the form of a human from the very beginning in order to avoid being caught and be equal to what he considered being a species that dominated the other. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this theory. Munna. A classic entry that refers to a Pokémon that was described by an NPC by the entrance of the rock tunnel in Kanto. She complained about Kantonian Pokémon being bulky and, instead, wished there were a pink Pokémon with a floral pattern. This could have been just a coincidence, but Munna is the Pokémon that almost perfectly fits this description. To my knowledge, nothing has been confirmed or disproven. Lowest and highest level wild Pokémon. The Nature Preserve, a location the player can access after seeing every Pokémon in the Unova Pokédex, is home to the lowest and highest level wild Pokémon in the entire Pokémon Core series as far as I know. In this place, you can find level 1 Gyarados or level 100 Magikarp. Pokémon Black and Blue. Talking about abuse, PETA released a mock game named Pokémon Black and Blue. In the game, the player controls a Pokémon to attack opposing humans who want to catch and mistreat Pokémon without taking them into consideration. The name Black and Blue makes reference to the euphemism for bruises, and PETA got many things wrong about the world of Pokémon, including the fact that Ash states that he never let Pikachu be outside of its Pokéball, when it is well known that Pikachu is a Pokémon that was outside basically during the entire series. As stated before, Pokémon enjoy battling while forming a bond with their trainers. Difficulty. The key system is a feature from Black 2 and White 2 that allowed players, among other things, to change the difficulty of the game after beating the champion. If you have Pokémon White 2, you'll get the easy key, accessing easy mode, or if you got Black 2, you'll be granted the challenge key. Difficulty in Pokémon games has always been a controversial topic, especially with recent games, as they're considered to be very easy by veteran players. As far as I know, this is the only instance in the core series games in which a difficulty setting was implemented, and it would have been amazing to have a challenge mode in other games. but actually Game Freak made a mistake with this mode. Supposedly, trainers such as gym leaders and the Elite Four are said to have all their Pokémon with 30 IVs in all their stats and higher levels. However, there's an error in which the IVs of this challenge mode Pokémon take into account their levels from normal mode. For example, Champion Iris's Haxorus will appear to be level 63, but still have the stats of a level 59 Haxorus. Shiny Charm. Good news for shiny hunters. If you're tired of spending weeks trying to come across a shiny Pokémon, now you'll only spend days, provided that you complete the national Pokédex excluding mythical Pokémon. Once done, your chance is 1 in 4096 of finding that rare Pokémon. To be fair, this was the generation where even with the shiny charm, shiny Pokémon were still rare, as in future games from generation 6 onward, the chance is 1 in 4096 by default, and with the shiny charm, 1 in 1365, honestly making shiny Pokémon not as rare as in older generations. Genesect original appearance. Over 300 million years ago, it was feared as the strongest of hunters. It has been modified by Team Plasma. This is one of the descriptions of Genesect from Pokémon Black. There's a popular theory that states that Genesect was a Kabutops that was heavily modified by Team Plasma. But I personally think that this is only because Kabutops kind of fits the shape of Genesect's body to a certain degree. We need to take into account, however, that Genesect is a modified Pokémon, so even if Genesect doesn't have blades like Kabutops, it doesn't mean that part of these modifications weren't done to remove them. It is also possible that Pokémon were vastly different in the remote past. Even if Kabutops lived 2 million years ago, doesn't mean that Kabutops doesn't have an ancestor too, which happened to be the Pokémon that became Genesect. Even if it's clear that Genesect is a bug Pokémon, it doesn't mean that it couldn't have evolved to live in the sea like Kabutops. An example of this adaptability is the fact that, depending on the region, Pokémon like Sandslash or Ninetales can have a completely different type in Alola. Maybe it's nothing, but have you ever seen the skeleton of a Kabutops? If you pay close attention, there are two big holes next to its orbits. To me, it almost looks like vestigial orbits. That is, eye sockets where the eyes of this Pokémon used to be before evolving into a Kabutops for millions of years. However, it is also likely that this Pokémon is completely unrelated to any of the Pokémon we know. It is unknown if we'll ever see the real appearance of Genesect before it turned into this mythical Pokémon. Guaranteed Shinies. Many years had to go by before a guaranteed shiny besides the red Gyarados from Generation 2 showed up again. Black 2 and White 2 offered the player a Gible or a Dratini respectively after defeating Alder's grandson. On top of that, if you've registered all Pokémon in the Unova Pokédex, you'll get a permit to travel to the Natural Preserve, in which the player will be able to catch a level 60 shiny Haxorus. Same as the red Gyarados, this dragon will always be guaranteed to be shiny. Rosa belonged to Team Plasma. Rosa is well known for being one of the two protagonists of Pokémon Black 2 and White 2, but her counterpart in the Pokémon Adventures manga, Whitley, was actually part of Team Plasma. Let's take into account that we're not talking about the same character, as we're talking about their counterparts from different universes. Lance, for example, is mainly a villain who wants to exterminate the human race save for a few people. Abyssal Ruins in real life. The Abyssal Ruins might have a parallel in our world, in the form of the Yonaguni Ruins, an underwater structure off the coast of Japan that has been believed to be man-made. According to several theories, this area could have been on the surface more than 10,000 years ago before the Ice Age. Were this to be true, the civilization that built it would have to be one of the most ancient civilizations known to mankind, even older than Sumerians. However, the consensus is that these apparently artificially made structures are actually natural formations. These ruins can also be a reference to the lost city of Atlantis, a powerful and ancient civilization that according to Plato's dialogues was sunken in the sea. N speaks too fast. As the entry states, N is one of the fastest speaking characters in the entire franchise. Compared to other NPCs, his speed text is extremely fast. This is noticed by Charon, who asks him to stop as he speaks too fast. Shiny Lock Pokémon. Bad news for shiny hunters in Generation 5. Every single Pokémon that could be battled up to Generation 4 could be shiny, regardless if they were legendary or mythical. However, Reshiram, Zekrom and Victini are impossible to encounter without the use of cheating devices, even if they have a shiny form within the game's code. This luck would continue with legendary and even starter Pokémon in the most recent games. The only reason I can think of regarding the existence of shiny locked Pokémon is to prevent the player from getting stuck in key moments of the game for a long time while shiny hunting this Pokémon. Aleos. This is a very short entry referring to Unova's pre-release name Aleos. This is bizarre as I don't really see where they took that name from. The Japanese name Ishu doesn't quite resemble this word. I remember somebody on the net saying that maybe it means something like all of us, as in the idea of union or Unova. Last mythical locations. Sadly, Generation 5 was the last game in which the player was able to visit a secret location in the game where they could catch a mythical Pokémon. Sure, there's DLC nowadays, but back then you didn't have to pay for this kind of content, although you did have to be in the right place at the right time to get key items that would open the path for the players to access these special locations. Take for example Faraway Island in Pokémon Emerald, where you could catch a Mew and even shiny hunt it, or Liberty Garden where Victini awaits you. Ein and Colress Parallel. Ein, a Cypher admin from Pokémon Colosseum, bears a striking resemblance to Colress, both in terms of appearance and motive. Both are scientists who wear glasses and a white lab coat and have a long, prominent hair flick. Furthermore, they both strive to unlock the potential in Pokémon, as well as siding with the villainous team of their respective games. Metagross used Ice Beam. There was a set of downloadable tournaments for Black 2 and White 2 where you could battle the top 4 contestants from the 2012 World Championship. One of these participants was Abel, who, due to an error, his team included a Metagross with the illegal move Ice Beam. This made people wonder if the contestant had actually hacked Metagross. However, this mistake was made by Nintendo, as its true attack was Ice Punch. This mistake was fixed 2 days after. Ghetsis' Arm and Eye. The true villain of the 5th generation of Pokémon games is iconic for having his right arm concealed, as well as his right eye covered by some sort of device like patch. Nowhere is it stated what exactly happened to Ghetsis, but there are several interesting things to say about him. His right arm is actually seen in the Pokémon Black and White intro, where he coronates Zen as the king of Team Plasma. We can see that his arm looks darkened, as if injured by some sort of burnt or frostbite. While his eye is never seen, there's concept art where it's visible. However, while his eye looks normal, the area around it looks injured, implying that he sustained some sort of damage on the right side of his body during a single event. I have a theory, but I don't know how well it holds up because Ghetsis is known to be a heartless manipulator. There is this group of characters known as the Shadow Triad, loyal servants to N and Ghetsis and high-ranked members of Team Plasma. They mention that they are loyal to Ghetsis because he once saved their lives. It is never mentioned in which way Ghetsis saved their lives, but maybe Ghetsis' arm and eye are a result of this process. It could be that in the past, and obviously considering that Ghetsis wasn't always the same evil person, he risked his own life by saving the Shadow Triad, probably from a fire or ice Pokémon attack, exposing the right side of his body, more precisely his eye and arm, injuring him and giving him his iconic appearance. I cannot picture Ghetsis doing something like that in recent events, so if this ever happened, it had to be in a moment in the past when Ghetsis was a completely different person. Again, There's nothing that supports what I'm saying, as it's only a personal theory. Giant Chasm and the Tunguska event. The Giant Chasm is a large impact crater where several alien Pokémon such as Solrock, Lunaton, and Clefairy can be found. This is a clear reference to a real-life event known as the Tunguska event, a massive explosion attributed to a meteorite that flattened an estimated 80 million trees in Russia on June 30, 1908. Dream World in Hoenn. The Pokémon Dream World allowed players to send a Pokémon to the internet to obtain items and meet other Pokémon, making the website like a Generation 5 analog to the Pokéwalker. A scientist working for the Devon Corporation in Pokémon Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald mentions that he's trying to create a device that visually reproduces the dreams of Pokémon, but that he's not succeeding. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, he says that a scientist from a faraway region is also working on the same project. Apparently, this other scientist refers to somebody from Unova who did succeed in the creation of the Dream World. Challenger's Cave Legendary. This cave can only be accessed after defeating the Elite Four and Team Plasma. It contains high-level Pokémon and trainers, but what's interesting is that, according to an ace trainer, there's a legendary Pokémon that lives in the cave and that it's training another Pokémon, its student Pokémon. The only instance of legendary Pokémon training another Pokémon are the Source of Justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. If this is true, it might be possible that one of the 3 legendary Pokémon could have brought Keldeo to train to that place in order to attain its resolute form. Kyurem is not an extraterrestrial Pokémon. There's a belief by people in Unova that Kyurem came from space in a meteorite. However, this statement contradicts the story of the original dragon that split into Reshiram, Zekrom and Kyurem, as when this happened, Kyurem must have already been on Earth. A possibility for both stories to be true is that maybe it was the original dragon that arrived on that meteorite, but nobody knows for sure. Ghost Girl. There is a deceased young girl that will appear during certain occasions on the marvelous bridge that disappears if you approach her. She appears in Black 2 and White 2 at the strange house at the base of Reversal Mountain. She has some sort of connection to Darkrai and Cresselia, as in the house where she appears, there's a lunar wing that when obtained, the girl will ask the player to return it to Cresselia. Her dialogues are as follows. An everlasting dark dream, an endless dream of darkness. Dad, Mom, Abra, where are you? In the dark dream, I heard my dad's voice. Forget about the lunar wing. Please, stay here with me. There's a theory that states that this girl lost her life due to the nightmares induced by the Pokémon Darkrai. Now, according to a Pokédex entry, it is said that Darkrai means no harm when afflicting others with nightmares to protect itself. However, if you remember the girl's dialogue, there's a part in which she says, "In the dark dream, I heard my dad's voice. Forget about the lunar wing. Stay with me." First of all, the lunar wing is an item that is used to dissipate endless nightmares. The fact that her dad asks the girl to forget about such item would mean that he wants the girl never to wake up from such nightmare. Taking everything into consideration, it's possible that the entity impersonating her dad was in actuality Darkrai itself. The presence of the lunar wing in the house means that the girl's parents could obtain it, but that it obviously was too late for her. The lunar wing and everything in the house was left behind by the parents whose destiny is completely unknown. This is not the first instance in which parents lose a daughter in the Pokémon franchise, as this is also the case of Dr. Fuji, who lost his daughter in a tragic accident. The presence of books about Pokémon related to dreams such as Drowsy, Hypno and Darkrai probably indicates that the girl's parents were doing research on how to cure her endless nightmares. If true, this is one of the saddest stories in the whole Pokémon franchise, and make Darkrai one of the most lethal and horrifying Pokémon anyone can encounter. Alder's Ancestor. In Pokémon Legends Arceus, there's a portrait of a character who strongly resembles Alder. If you take a closer look, you can see that this mysterious character has 6 spherical objects around his neck, which honestly resemble Pokeballs in the same fashion as Alder. Now, there's an interesting theory surrounding the Unova League champion. Due to the fact that he speaks in old-fashioned Japanese and that he doesn't know how the Pokémon storage system works, despite him not being an elder, it is believed that Alder comes from a remote past. He could indeed be the ancient hero mentioned in Hisuian legends, a human that was able to befriend 10 Pokémon in a time when becoming friends with one was a tough task. As far as I know, Alder is the only person seen carrying more than 6 Pokémon. In fact, in Pokémon Masters, his model shows him carrying 11 Pokeballs. Not exactly 10, but very close. The only problem with this theory is that Pokeballs didn't exist at all in the times of the ancient hero. Another theory is that Alder actually comes from the future, and that same as the main character in Legends Arceus, he was also sent to the remote past by Arceus in order to test him. Coming from the future with all the knowledge on Pokémon, it's likely that going to the past, he could have used that in order to befriend wild Pokémon in that remote era. In this case, the fact that he doesn't know how to use the Pokémon storage system and that he speaks in old-fashioned Japanese might just be a consequence of living in the past for a long time. To this day, nobody really knows for sure. Thank you so much for 5,000 subscribers. Please let me know in the comments which were your favorite entries or which ones I missed out on. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.